Hi, I'm Silken Laumann. There are so many wonderful Canadian books to choose from. Today, I've chosen the first novel of author Ami MacKay, The Birth House. Central to this book are two wonderfully strong female characters, Dora Rare and Miss Babineau. It takes place in Scotts Point in Nova Scotia at the turn of the century and illustrates a tension between midwifery and modern medicine. Right away, when we begin the book, we get a sense of who Dora Rare is. Ever since I can remember, people have had more than enough to say about me. As the only daughter in 5 generations of Rares, most figure I was changed by fairies or not my father's child. Mother works and prays too hard to have anyone but those with the cruelest of tongues doubt her devotion to my father. When there's no good explanation for something, people of the Bay find it easier to believe in mermaids and moss babies, to call it witchery and be done with it. Long after the New England's planter seeds wore the Micmac out of my family's blood, I was born with coal black hair, cinnamon skin, and a caul over my face. A foretelling, a sign. A gift that supposedly allows me to talk to animals, see people's deaths, and hear the whisperings of spirits. A charm for protection against drowning. When one of Laird Jessop's Highland heifers gave birth to a 3-legged albino calf, talk followed, and people tried to guess what could have made such a creature. In the end, most people blamed me for it. I had witnessed the cow bawling her calf onto the ground. I had been the one who ran to the Jessops to tell the young farmer about the strange thing that had happened. Dora talks to ghosts. Dora ate bat soup. Dora slit the devil's throat and flew over the chicken coop. My classmates chanted that verse between the slats of the garden gate, along with all the other words their parents taught them not to say. Of course, there are plenty of schoolyard stories about Miss V too, most of them ending with, if your cat or baby goes missing, you'll know where to find its bones. It's talk like that that made us such good friends. Miss B says she's glad for gossip. It keeps folks from coming to places they don't belong. Most days, I wake up and say a prayer. I want, I wish, I wait for something to happen to me. While I thank God for all good things, I don't say this verse to him, or to Jesus, or even to Mary. They're far too busy to be worrying about the affairs and wishes of my heart. No, I say my prayer more to the air than anything else, hoping it might catch on the wind and find its way to anything, to something that's mine. Mother says a young lady should take care with what she wishes for. I'm beginning to think she's right.
When Ami MacKay moved to Scotts Bay in Nova Scotia, she bought a house with her family. She found out that the house used to be a birthing house. And that led, I think, to her interest in the subject.
This book is just chock full of things like advertisements from the era and recipes and invitations, and it's just a great scrapbook of stuff that make the era come alive.
Early on in The Birth House, we meet the second central character, Miss Babineau, who is the local midwife. She's had her hand in delivering all the babies in Scotts Bay and the surrounding area, and there's kind of a mystique that surrounds her. She's a woman who lives on her own and delivers babies all day and all night. Miss Babineau's voice carries the sound of 2 places, the dancing Cajun truth of her Louisiana past and the quiet, steady way of talk that comes from always working at something. Some say she's a witch. Others say she's more of an angel. Either way, most of the girls in the Bay, including me, have the middle initial M for Marie. She's not a blood relative to anyone here, but we've always done our part to take care of her. My brothers chop her firewood and put it up for the winter, while Father makes sure her windows and her roof on her cabin are sound. Whenever we have extra preserves or a loaf of bread or a basket of apples, Mother sends me to deliver them to Miss B. She helped bring all you children into this world, and she saved your life, Dora. Brought your fever down when there was nothing else I could do. Anything we have is hers. Anything she asks, we do. I didn't read a single word until I was in grade 4. For some reason, the early foundational blocks of reading didn't come easily to me. And I remember it was up to about grade 6 that I read my first book, and it was The Miracle Worker, about the story about Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller. And I just felt like this whole world had opened to me. I've learned some of the most important things in my life through books. I mean, I am both an experiential learner, but I think even a work of fiction, you can learn so much about history and a place in time that you knew nothing about. There's a richness that books add to my life. I think one of the things that struck me so powerfully in the book is this idea of where the coming into the world, where the birthing of babies lives, and in traditional societies, in societies for years and years, it lived in the hands of women. Women had the power to bring life into the world. Not only did they give birth to their own babies, but they were helped by other women, and generations of knowledge was passed from woman to woman. And I couldn't stay away from the politics in this book too, around that ancient art and magic around giving birth, and this sterilized idea of what birth is that has been so prevalent over the last 50 to 80 years. At this point in the birth house, we meet Dr. Thomas. It's hard to like Dr. Thomas. He's come to Scots Bay to save the women of Scots Bay from midwifery and bring modern medicine to them. And there's something mercenary about him. Right away we get a sense that, as Miss Babineau says, he ain't telling, he's selling. And he invites all the women of Scots Bay and the surrounding area to see the new delivery rooms that have been set up with modern medicine, helping apparently the women have easier births. Dr. Thomas greeted us as we approached the 3rd floor. "Welcome to the delivery room, ladies." The top post of the banister, once dark with carved sea serpents and sailing ships, had been painted over, whitewashed like everything else. The dreary attic was now a wide, ample space. 10 spare beds with tight white sheets lined the walls. In the center of it all was a large table set with candles, finger sandwiches, and fine china. Mr. Thomas motioned for us to be seated. "Please, won't you join me for tea?" He took each of the ladies' hands as they entered the room, complimenting their dresses and hats, commenting on mutual acquaintances, distant relatives, and the weather. He paused when he came to me, repeating my name after I said it. Miss Dora Rare, a lovely name. We sipped our tea as Dr. Thomas explained the advantages of modern childbirth. He pulled on a sheet that was hanging from the ceiling and let it fall down as a partition between 2 beds. At the Canning Maternity Home, we have both privacy and efficiency. Up to 10 women can labor at once and still have the best in obstetrical care. He pushed the sheet back and tied it to the wall, and more beds can be added as needed. He stood at the end of the bed and turned a crank. The head of the bed rose and lowered and then rose again. The new mother can labor and rest in the same bed. He bent down and yanked a metal footing from either side of the end of the bed, smacking them into place with a hard jolt. Stirrups for support during birthing. The ladies all smiled and nodded. While they continued to eat their tiny sandwiches, Dr. Thomas wheeled over a metal cart. It was draped with a sheath and looked something like a caddy for tea and sweets. Aunt Fran gasped when he revealed the contents of the tray. The doctor chuckled. "Oh, it may look ominous, but I assure you it's all part of progress." The tray was cluttered with shiny silver knives, scissors, and other medical instruments. Stored in the compartment beneath were jars of every shape and size. He took 2 medicine bottles and nestled them around the flower arrangement in the center of the table. Pitutrin and chloroform, a mother's 2 best friends. He then held up a large pair of wide tongs. Forceps, the obstetrical physician's best friend.
Dora is very young when we meet her. She learns to use the things that her natural curiosity has brought to her, and she learns to respect and trust her ability to make a difference in people's lives. And we learn along with her how much depth and capability and wisdom she has.
This next part of the book is pivotal. It's where the torch, the midwifery torch, is being passed from Miss Babineau to Dora Rare. And it's going to be the first baby that Dora actually delivers, where she's there to pull out the baby. And in the room are all Mabel, who is the mother giving birth, her friends helping her bring the baby into the world. Mabel whimpered, her body shaking and weak. I don't know if I can. Mrs. B's voice was firm. You ain't got no choice. Now here we go. Mother Mary, help this mama, help this baby. Mother Mary, Blessed Virgin, Our Lady of the Moon and Star of the Sea, Ave Maria Stellis, un, deux, trois. Mabel closed her eyes and let out a long, anguished wail. Bertine and Sadie cried out loud beside her, moaning right along with her, all 3 women letting out heavy groans as the baby slipped out, all milky looking and wet. I pulled the cord free from its neck. Miss B scooped the baby up, opening its tiny mouth with her fingers. She held her mouth to the infant's, her cheeks puffing with gentle breaths, then made the sign of the cross over and over as the baby gave its first cry. It was late by the time we finished tending to Mabel and her new baby, clearing away the blood-stained sheets, spooning fennel broth between Mabel's tired lips. Miss B squeezed drops of watery red alder tea into the infant's mouth to clear the liver and cut the hives. When mother and child were sleeping, we left them to Sadie and Bertine's care. I recorded the day's events in the Willow Book, still amazed at the way it felt to be the first person to bring her hands to a child's life. While it cannot replace the sadness I feel over Darcy, it has changed me, somehow opening my heart again. Dora Rare is such a memorable character. I mean, she's such a strong woman and an unusual woman. You know that from the very start of the book. And I think that's what I'll remember about the book, about her being a woman that didn't quite fit in to what women were supposed to be. I identified with parts of that, that sort of need that so many of us feel to fit in, but sort of the deep knowing that we don't really. And so Dora, to me, just really resonates for me. And her strength, her sense of humor, her, just her pragmatic approach that, she gets the job done and she does what needs to be done to care for the children and the women of her community. And I could just really left an impression on me. I was inspired by her.
What's fascinating about The Birth House is that it is a historical novel. It's set in 1916 to 1918. And it describes the clash between modern science and old wisdom. The debate still exists as to who has authority, whose methods are preferable, and whom do we trust with our births. I had my baby in Newfoundland, and in Newfoundland, there are still issues about whether or not a midwife can practice in a hospital. There's a separation between midwifery and the jurisdiction of hospitals.
When I gave birth to my children, who are now 9 and 12, I mean, my 12-year-old, you had to pay privately for midwifery in British Columbia, but you didn't have to pay for a doctor. And I chose to have a midwife. Now, she was not allowed to actually deliver the baby because I had my baby in the hospital. She could do, everything, but when it came to actually catching the baby, it had to be a doctor. And I had to find a doctor that was willing to work with a midwife.
I didn't have my children in a natural setting, not by any means. I never felt that I had lost the opportunity for a great experience in having my kids in a hospital. But then I never really knew what it could be like to do things the way that Dora did. And she opened my eyes to a whole other world.
So this passage really shows the contrast between the births that we've just seen and witnessed in the book, which were surrounded by women, the midwives giving the women help as they were giving birth. And then this is Ginny's first birth, and she has it at the Canning Maternity Home, and this is her experience. I can tell Ginny's nervous, scared. It's her first baby after all. Laird worries so. You're a good girl, Ginny. You'll be a good mother. Dr. Thomas says he can make it easier. He can take the pain away. Twilight sleep, scopolamine and morphine. She won't remember a thing. She's breathing heavy. Here it comes. Yes, yes, make it go away. Count back from 100. Relax. All will be well. She's propped up, heels settled in the stirrups, knees falling limply to either side. The body keeps working while she's gone, quaking, twitching. He's silent as he works down there between Ginny's legs. There's another woman in the delivery room. She's angry, howling every complaint she's ever had against her husband. Bastard, son of a bitch, lazy, stupid, yellow, no account, bucket mouth ass. I wonder if there's pain, even if she's not aware of it. Will it come back in a dream tonight? Tomorrow? He tells me the method he's using gives him complete control. A clean slice to a tight red skin. This allows for the outlet forceps to enter without lacerations. It allows for clean, accurate repair when all is said and done. The other woman is groaning, weeping, asking for her mother. Ginny's child is extracted. His head misshaped, a little bruised, breathing like he's exhausted and can't catch any air. Oh, twilight sleep leaves him a little short of breath, nothing that a hot bath in the nursery won't cure. The other mother is quiet now. I can hear her breathing on the other side of the curtain pulled around her bed. Ginny's eyes open and her hand reaches out to me. The rest of her body is still, as if she's afraid to question what just happened. There will be no moment of celebration at the end. She's feeling left behind, unsure. You're a good girl, Ginny. You'll be a wonderful mother. The doctor sees this as normal, a kind of bliss. He's happy when he greets her and tells her everything went smoothly. Splendid, a healthy baby boy. Can you recall what happened? Not much. No, nothing actually. Good, good. She's weak on her feet. She can't keep her food down. She thanks him for his accomplishment. She waits to hold her child.
The novel, The Birth House, is set up against the background of great historical events. The First World War is happening, the Halifax explosion happens, the suffragette movement is in full swing.
There's a ton of research that went into this. We learn a lot about the time, and we learn a lot about power and empowerment and how an individual, through her choices and through just being willing to use what she has, what little that is, can make an enormous difference in people's lives.
Then we come to the end of the first section of the book, and this is the place where Miss Babineau decides that her time has come, that she's gotten old, and she just leaves, and she writes a note to Dora telling her not to go look for her, that she knows the end of her life has come and she wants it this way. And Dora, of course, feels the loss of this beautiful woman very profoundly. I dreamed of her laughter and the scent of coffee brewing in the morning, of the crooked handwriting that lined the pages of the Willow Book, every statue and likeness of the Holy Mother singing her prayers to me as I slept. I dreamed that I had come back to what was left of the place, set it on fire to burn to the ground, the flames bursting high up into the night. Shadowing men shoveled seaweed around the edges of the fire to make sure it didn't spread, bringing things they didn't want anymore, a broken down buggy seat, rotten apple barrels, used up lobster traps. Then the women came. They cried over Mrs. B while they held their children tight. They stood next to each other, sharing stories of the births they had had under her care. I held my mother's hand and rested my head on her shoulder, while Mrs. B's ghost flew all around us, singing, "They're gonna need you, Dora. They need you. You gotta keep them safe." And so we come to the end of this first part of this two-part book, The Birth House by Ami MacKay. In the second part, we see Dora really coming to her full power as a woman and a prominent figure in her community. It's a wonderful story, rich with language and imagery and magic. I don't get any sense of fulfillment and joy and pleasure from a book that's not written well. So the language, the turn of phrase, the way that a writer can use just a few words, and you know, the words themselves, if separated, wouldn't make sense. You know, but the way they've been put together, it's artistry, it's poetry, and immediately you know exactly, you can see it in your mind's eye what that character's feeling, what they're conveying with that gesture. You know, coaching in rowing, coaching is an art, and you can learn to coach and figure out, you know, how the hands need to move and how the legs need to move. But a great coach knows how to say the words and make the sounds so that they come together and you feel something in your body. And a good writer, I think, does the same thing. They juxtapose all these ideas and all these words together, and separately they might not make sense, but when they all come together, it takes you to a place, it makes you feel something. You can't intellectualize it to a certain extent. You just have to journey through the book with this writer.